it shouldn't be as much. It should start with get up.
Yeah. Wish we could hear it to see how good you're dancing.
Want some earphones?
Yeah. Just because I like to hear Kev Moe.
You ready?
Good morning and welcome to Live from the Heartland. I'm Tom Clark, along with my colleagues Michael James and Katie Hogan.
Hey, hey.
We're getting ready for our second big snowfall this season as the skies gray up and bitter cold begins to set in.
You think it'll be as bad as they make it out on the air?
Probably not. I mean, it's just 5
Never
inches,
is.
maybe 10, maybe 12. It's Chicago, you know, what's over a few days, it's really not all that much, right?
Right. I remember when I still owned a business that people had to walk to. How I used to get so ticked off at the build up to the 6 inches, which would usually turn out to be 4, and you know it would basically mean people stock up on food, they mole up in their apartments, they just stay put. And
Pull out the old movies.
as a
Look for a
joint
football
owner
game.
in winter, it was like we need all the help we can get.
So just
please.
imagine being in a tent on the plains of North Dakota.
Wow.
Although they had their hearts warmed a little bit this week. Katie, can you talk with us a little bit about what happened?
Well, there definitely was a victory on Sunday, or did it come on Monday?
Overnight, I think.
Monday it was, yeah. That the Army Corps of Engineers ceased construction on the lands of the Standing Rock Reservation and adjacent to the Missouri River. I'm not exactly sure the geography of it, but everyone understands it's a temporary victory, given what's heading our way, all of our ways, with the government. But it is a momentary victory. I basically was so touched by the joining of forces by vets in large numbers over last weekend. I don't think was coincidental to the decision being made, as well as the violence of the policing forces around there, and people's outrage at it. I mean, a lot of folks, not just in the U.S. but around the world, had their eye on Standing Rock. So I salute everyone who's been there. I think it's a historic healing moment for the nation, for the gathering of tribes, historic gathering of tribes that it means, and for the incredible ceremonial forgiveness thing that went down with the vets.
That was beautiful where
and
they
the tribes.
asked for forgiveness
So
for the
yes.
oppression.
Those elders have to feel like they have finally had the moment to step into themselves fully.
Well, it gave you a rather poignant, emotional moment to start this community meeting we had on Monday.
Right.
Part of the first Mondays that the Heartland Cafe has been doing for a while, kind of movie night, but it's evolved, particularly post-Bernie Sanders campaign. And I don't know if that was something you planned, but you really got caught up in this moment with this new news to a group of neighbors who were trying to figure out what to do next, probably feeling a little down on the mouth about what's happened the last month, and quite frankly, I think you lifted up the room by talking about this victory.
I'm always glad to hear that.
I wish I had been there. I was home watching Monday Night Football.
Well, that we're doing a lot of that these days too, but
No, it was a great meeting, I hear, and a lot of people filled the Heartland.
and I want to give a shout out to Kathleen Rose Dillon, who is the political manager for the Heartland Cafe, and really helped along with the manager Tim and Tom Rosenfeld to pull this thing off. But there were over 75 people in the room, and I thought a fairly wide-ranging conversation from the technical to the what happened to the how I'm feeling.
Yeah,
And a little bit of what to do next with 8 organizations there that people could find out about and sign up for.
yeah, I loved the folks who showed up to represent their organizations, and that was, of course, as we all know at this table, a small representation of the number of folks doing good things in our neighborhood, but it was a really good representation of those that are active on the ground right now, Reclaim, People's Lobby. I mean, Howard Area Community Center came, some folks who we'll have on the show too, the folks from Surge, and of course the folks we have had on the show, CPAC, who else was there?
Youth Circle.
Oh, the
group.
Just Harvest and Cycles and Ciphers and Circles. I think it's reverse. Circles and Ciphers. Yeah, we'll talk about them later. Anyway, it was great.
Before the snow comes tonight, you ought to ramble over to Jarvis, because there's a whole winter festival going on with artists and great food and all that. And I just want to plug our public house, which had a fairly unique eating event this past week, and they're going to do it again. A gourmet prepared 5-course meal paired with wine for the proprietor next door, whose name I'm blanking out on at the moment, I'm sorry. But it was a truly marvelous evening as I talked with the 70 or so patrons of this special meal. Everybody was from Rogers Park. Some had walked there, some had driven from a short distance away. There's no parking in that area, but unless you want to use up one of Joe Moore's office parking spots, but do so at your own risk, I think. But it was just, it was wonderful to find, along with the wholesome natural food you can find at the Heartland Cafe and any number of other establishments in our fine neighborhood. Our public house really stepped it up for a midweek soiree.
For you out there in Radio Land, our public house is R, as in the letter R for Renee, the host, as opposed to OUR, which you might have been hearing. It's our public house on Jarvis, and you're right to give it a plug. They're great neighbors, great business people, and there's that festival today. So we have the building of an anti-labor, anti-EPA, anti-women, dealing with global warming cabinet. How we feeling? How's everybody feeling at the end of this week?
On top of the news that not only has the president still, Mr. Obama,
Yeah, we can
asked
still
for
call
an
him President
investigation.
Obama.
Of Russian involvement in hacking during the campaign, but apparently Washington Post is reporting today that the CIA several months ago
Right.
suggested the same thing, and if I dare put it this way, the report was suppressed because not every intelligence agency went along with the findings.
Well, I think that when I heard that news this morning about the CIA knowing, pinpointing a source of the hacking 2 months or more ago, I thought, once again, Barack, you smart guy. You very smart guy. He basically asked for a report that already exists this week, and he asked for it to be shared before he leaves office. Thank you, Barack. And people, I don't give a...
Careful.
I'm thanking Barack whenever I darn well feel like it.
Well,
Deal
we're
with
gonna
it.
miss him. We're gonna miss him.
Yeah.
I have a feeling he'll be pretty involved over the next 4 years in making commentary, and there are people talking about, that there ought to be a shadow government, something like in Europe where you got people on the case all the time, pointing out, criticizing. We'll see what the Democrats do. They've been pretty
Quiet.
If they've been quiet, and if you look at the Senate race that's going on in special election down in Louisiana, you had Trump down there yesterday pumping it up for the Republican. There have not been a lot of Democrats stepping in to support this guy.
Well, that's what he said, no DNC presence. I know for a fact that a few hundred people have gone there to make phone calls, and there have been phone banking
Yeah, there's
into
been a lot of people
Louisiana
making phone calls.
out of state for a number, since the election, because this is a runoff. But if the DNC has blown their opportunity to even up the sides, people, you are just not fit to even talk about. So let's stop talking about them. We got a
Okay.
great show today. We've got Nolan Chin coming on. I would say in front of the camera, except for you're out in Radio Land. And
Yeah, but you can see these shows now on video. If you go to the livefromtheheartland.com, you will find a link to the youtube.com/heartlandmedia.
Okay.
And there's a lot of video.
So Nolan is our engineer, as many of you are familiar, and he's going to pick some music that he likes to hear and talk about his life. DJing, we have Salome Chasnoff, who's going to talk to us about Code of the Freaks, a documentary on the representation of disability in cinema. And we're going to start up with Darlene Glanton. Welcome, Darlene Glanton, who is a Trib columnist and been covering a bunch of the issues that we talk about here all the time. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for joining us. It's actually a bit overdue as someone who's followed your work for so long. How does a reporter cover the news in this new era we seem to be moving into? Where facts, well, whose facts are you talking about?
Well, it's difficult. I mean, certainly I think our job is going to require a lot more diligence. With social media, I think that's our biggest challenge, especially with the president-elect. I mean, how do you compete with someone going on Twitter,
Good question.
you know?
Really, how do
saying
you?
anything? Right, that's true. And so the question we have to ask is, you know, how much of this is actually news?
There you go.
Good point.
You know,
Yeah.
how much of it is a distraction?
Right.
And how much of it is worth actually covering. So I think we're going to be seeing a lot more of that from our president to come.
You mean a lot more tweeting and?
A lot more tweeting, a lot more talking off the cuff without anything based on facts.
So a lot more in the sense that we've never seen it from the
We've never
president
seen it
before.
from the president
Right.
before, and or many politicians, to be quite honest.
Right, right. That's right.
Yeah, so it's going to be difficult for us. It's going to be very difficult, I think.
You're a veteran editor, reporter, now a prominent columnist responding to what's happening. 2 columns a week? How often?
3.
3 columns a week.
It's a lot of work.
I know, I know.
Can I ask, what is
She
it?
looks remarkably rested, folks. She's really, she's got a mask
Relaxed,
on.
calm, cool, collected.
Well, I'm not a morning person, so I don't know
Oh,
how
that's
coming
good.
about.
That works for you. You're still asleep, basically.
Basically,
What's it
yeah.
like to be in a profession that you've labored in for a while and be called one of those nasty people?
I know.
What does that mean?
Do you
Bob?
wear that as a badge of honor for the president-elect, or does it scare you?
Oh, from the president. Not really. No. I mean, yeah. I mean, I think it's kind of a badge of honor. I mean, look. Our job is going to be to make sure he doesn't get away with a lot of crazy stuff, and so I think we have to be fearless. You know, I think we have to not worry about what he thinks, certainly, but more important than that, I think, are the responses that we get from the public. I mean, you would not believe every time I write something about Trump that's negative, I get tons of negative. I mean, people calling me all kinds of names.
How
that
come
kind of
they're
thing.
so
It's-
organized?
I don't know that they're organized. I just think there are a lot of them out there and they're pretty vocal. And yeah, I don't think there's any real organized effort.
Mm-hmm.
They just like to let their
So,
feelings known.
so is it a moment where suddenly they feel free to, you know, now they got their guy there,
Mhm.
and so they can say, well, this is what my guy stands for, whether or not that's the case.
Uh-huh.
Which, you know, I have to add every time because we have no idea what he stands for. But so you think it's that has Trump's existence and success has opened the door to people being able to say stuff?
Absolutely. I think he has given people legitimacy.
Yeah.
And it's really scary because what I get a lot of is people saying we won, not the country won, but
Right.
we won. So
Right.
who is this we we're talking about?
He is a minority president, I mean, in the sense that he didn't get the majority of the votes.
Right, not the first time. for
Darlene
that.
Blanton, I'm looking at a list of your headlines of your column, and I wonder if you would talk a little bit about and tell us what the reaction was to the one that says, "White women, own up to it. You're the reason Hillary Clinton lost." Did you take any heat for that?
Oh my goodness, did I? Did I?
And why? And tell us why you think that's a true thing.
Well, you know, this is interesting because after Trump made the comments, the video came out, Access Hollywood video, I wrote a column that said women are going to take him down.
We thought so.
Yeah.
I know, I truly believe that. I mean, I just felt it all around me. I was shocked, and I think a lot of people were, when white women in particular
Right?
did not turn out for him in numbers that
For,
they should
for
have.
Hillary,
For Hillary.
yeah.
In numbers that they should have. And one of the reasons I wrote this column is because there had been a lot of discussion about how African Americans had not turned out in numbers, the same numbers as they had for Barack Obama. And I felt like it was unfair to place this blame on African Americans, especially women. We turned out 91% for Hillary.
Exactly.
And so
Exactly. So stop it with that.
Right. And so I think it was important to just talk about how white women dropped the ball
Yeah.
on this one.
Hey, when you get the chance, try. I mean, really, when you get the opportunity to point something out based on facts and figures, why not? I mean, the other part of, looking at elections is everybody dropped the ball, Everybody dropped the ball in some way or some fashion or another on this one. And there's, if people are interested in blaming, it's a month away. It's a month gone now. I only feel right now that I'm beginning to actually come to consciousness. I think I have not allowed myself to be fully conscious of it in protection mode. So back to what you write about. You also write a lot about our community of Chicago and what is not community about it right now, which is the violence that plagues only certain neighborhoods and continues to. And you did a great column on the block in Englewood. You want to talk about how that's holding up and what it means to you to be somebody who put the spotlight on that?
I think that was a very interesting story, piece for me to do, because we often hear that people in the communities aren't doing anything to fight the crime in their own communities. And I wanted to show that that's not the case.
Oh,
These
good.
women who live in Englewood patrol during the summer, one of the most dangerous blocks in that community. They sit out there in lawn chairs. They always
Their
have
iced tea.
iced tea. They have barbecue grills going, so anybody who wants something to eat or needs something to eat can come by and just, eat. And on this particular day, they were having a back to school kind of community event for the neighborhood. And there were kids and people from everywhere. This is one of the things that really struck me, though. It wasn't just the women from Englewood. There were people from all over the city, from Oak Park, from suburbs, who had come in to be a part of this. As a matter of fact, they had donated so many book bags and other supplies that they didn't even have any room for them on the tables. And so the point of this was, you can sit at home and complain and criticize if you want to, but there are people in our community who are actually out there doing things, and they're not just the people who live in the community, but there are people who live everywhere. They saw this as a responsibility of all of ours. It's all of our responsibility to address this issue.
As a columnist, besides trying to decide what you're going to write about today, how much attention are you paying to a particular audience that a Tribune subscriber or reader might be out there? Do you follow web traffic to see how you're rating with the current number of hits on your columns, or are you just concentrating on all those comments that come from it, or do you pay attention to the comments?
I don't really read the comments that much. I used to when I first started, because actually from the comments I would get ideas.
Your next column.
Right. I mean, because I wanted to know what people were thinking so that I could address that and say, well, you know what, I don't think you're right, but here you go. But, so I don't necessarily read the comments anymore. I do get lots of emails. I read every email. I don't respond because I get so many, and I know people are often offended by that, but it's just impossible to do that. So, I forgot what the question was now.
Well, I asked about 4 there, but I was
Yeah.
trying to get a sense of
Do you
how
pay
you
attention?
measure
Yeah.
who is actually paying attention
Right.
beyond the trolls,
Right.
if I can put it that way.
Right, absolutely. We pay more attention to the online traffic, and so it is important. I do look at the numbers because I need to know whether a particular topic is resonating with people or not, and sometimes I don't care. I mean, I think if it's an important topic, I want to put it out there anyway, and I really don't care whether people respond to it or not.
I like that, Doctor.
Yeah.
Do your bosses care? Do you get any pressure?
I don't.
Cool.
Of course, you know, they want the online traffic. I mean, that's
Sure.
what we're interested in now.
Mm.
And so, you know, I think a lot of it has to do with timing. You know, also when a story is posted.
Hits. Mhm.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
all of that plays into it.
You know, in the news lately is a community of Mount Greenwood on the southwest side. And there was a shooting there, and there were some demonstrations, and there was some pretty rough-edged racial back and forth. And most recently, some young women at, I think, Marist,
Yes.
were suspended because of using the N-word and having a little network. Have you written about Mount Greenwood, or do you plan to? Do you have any insights to what's going on there?
I haven't written about Mount Greenwood, but I have been following it, of course, as you know, most people have here in Chicago. One of the things that strikes me is that there is such underlying tension in this city, and such a lack of understanding between people who live in one area versus people who live in other areas. And Tom, you may remember this. I mean, back years ago, remember Canaryville?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And it really kind of reminded me of that. This was a case where I think the cops had dropped a black kid
Yep.
off in this predominantly white area of Canaryville, and it just turned ugly. So, and that was over a decade ago, and we're still seeing these things now. What does that say about Chicago? What does it say about our country? And, you know, when you think about some of the other things that have happened since the election, the Michaels incident,
Mm. This is about it was online, a lot of people saw it, it got zoomed everywhere, about the young white woman basically going off on a tear at Michael's, the store, the craft store, it was not on camera, but to an African-American manager of the store, and maybe clerk as well. I mean, it was crazy. And some other customer caught it on tape. Yeah, I have a feeling, what were you going to say about that?
I was just
Those
going to say
incidents.
that, I mean, there are a lot of people who say that this woman may have had some other issues. But, I mean, that's fine. The fact is, though, that it happened. And it didn't just happen here. It's happening across the country. It's a pattern, I
Yeah.
think.
900 incidents counted by the Southern Poverty Law Center since the election.
Yes,
Oh.
and
Which is
Since the
everything, which is
election.
racial, which is Muslim, which is
Jewish.
anti-women, anti-Jewish.
Mhm.
What, Michael?
Well, I was going to, on that note, I was going to say, what about the sanctuary movement? And the mayor has, even told Trump supposedly that he, we're going to be a sanctuary city, and there are over 100 sanctuary cities, and now Trump has taken one kind of a bold position that there's been none of that. Your sense about where that's going, and will this be a battle that we give into or we win? The University of Illinois statewide has said they will not provide sanctuary, as opposed to DePaul, which has been all over, we're going to provide sanctuary for people who need it.
you know, this very well could be an issue that ends up in the courts. And I don't know whether that would be a bad thing. One of the things I like about that is that it shows that there are many people who have compassion and many people who understand and want to make a difference. I admire the mayor for taking that stand.
On this front, yes.
Yes, on this front.
He's only following in the footsteps of Harold Washington, who created Chicago's sanctuary city status back in 1986,
Mhm.
when he had no admission to ICE, to the post office. But we're mixing a lot
Long
of
live
different
Harold.
things,
Mhm.
because we were talking about violence, we were talking about approach to violence, we're talking about Chicago, the divided city. How, as you cover it so specifically, which I appreciate it, what are we willing to do about stopping violence? What do you see out there?
That's what we have to ask ourselves, and that's a question we have to ask the mayor too, because a few months ago, he made this huge announcement
Mm.
speech about violence, and I wrote a column at the time saying it's about time. At that point, we'd had more than 3,000 shootings and 500 homicides, and now we're over 4,000 shootings
Right.
and
700 some,
739,
right.
I think, shootings. So the mayor has to really, I mean, he really needs to come through with some of these promises. I mean, we need more police. We need the programs that mentor young men. We need jobs.
Jobs. Jobs.
What's your sense of the mayor's situation? You know, after the McQuan McDonald thing, it looked like he was going to be a dead duck down the line. There are still people talking about, you know, who's going to run against him. He seems to have gotten himself a little bit of fresh air on the whole issue with the sanctuary statement and position he's taken. Your sense about him, will he be continue to be our mayor? Will he have a formidable opposition? Any sense from your working the neighborhoods and networks about where people are at and what's going on?
Well, it's kind of hard to say at this point, you know. I think a lot of it depends on what he's able to do about this violent situation, because he's certainly not going to get the African American vote unless he can do something with that. I mean, I think that's what's, you know, one of the major things people are looking at. Now, he's also very unpopular because of taxes. So, I mean, he has a lot of issues that he has to deal with. I think people might be kind of over the school thing right now, but who knows what might pop up with that later. So, it's going to be a tough challenge for him. At this point, I don't know who's interested in challenging him. I mean, has anybody actually said publicly that they are? I don't
Not yet.
think so.
No.
Waiting on Tom Dart.
Denise Blanton, Tribune columnist, how delightful to meet and have this conversation on early Saturday morning.
Yeah.
We
thanks
Glad
so
you got
much.
up for us.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and we're reading you because I think you're bringing a voice of some sanity
Keep
and groundedness.
Keep on keeping on
I
with that.
appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, we'll have you back.
You're listening to Live from the Heartland on WLUW 88.7 FM. Please like us on Facebook and check out our new
Stick around.
website, livefromtheheartland.com, where audio links and video links are available